Welcome everybody to the CHRO South Africa webinar. Please ensure that you introduce yourselves to the panelists and to everyone. When you type in the chat, please ensure that you direct your comments and questions to panelists and attendees, because otherwise other attendees won't be able to see your comments. And yeah, I suppose let's get into it. Today we are going to be discussing whether hiring robots and AI are going to be the future of recruitment. And before I continue, my name is Sungula Nkabinde. I'm the community manager at CHRO South Africa. And the reason why we're going to be discussing this today is that advancing AI is rapidly changing the talent acquisition landscape. But what does all of this mean for talent acquisition teams in the future? As AI enters the workforce, the crucial question is not whether this will affect recruitment roles, but rather how. The debate on AI's future role in talent acquisition is fast gaining momentum. And we're here to kind of unpack what this future landscape is going to look like. How talent acquisition leaders should foster a cohesive working relationship between humans and machines in what has been termed as super teams. Joining us today in our discussion, which is brought to you by TalentSmith Technology, is international speaker and CEO of Cammio Video Recruitment, Walter Hueber. We also have Heidi Kornmuller, who's the head of HR at Coronation Fund Managers. Ndivhu Nepfumbada is the HR director for Africa at TransUnion. And finally, Joe Blake, who's the group head of talent acquisition at Absa. So welcome to you all, and thank you very much for availing yourselves for this discussion. And let's get right into it. Walter, I'd like to start with you. You describe yourself as a growth entrepreneur, and you've had 20 years in the industry of building high-performance teams. What would you say is the importance of AI and humans working together in order to create productivity, efficiency, and value?
Yeah, thanks. And I'm really happy to join this panel today, and happy to have a lively discussion, I think, on this topic. I think when I look at the combination of people and technology, I've always kind of been very fascinated about this, because basically I think in essence what you see is that there's lots of opportunity for people to really kind of be enhanced with the technology that we have available to us. So I don't really see it as a conflict between the human and the machine, but really as an enhancement of human capabilities that is driven by technology innovation. So I think that's really kind of what I see happening in the market right now. If it's okay, I'd like to set the scene a bit and have a bit of a research being shared in the panel. So basically,
no problem. Please go ahead.
So kind of just want to kind of set the scene a bit and have some interesting research for you from the World Economic Forum, from Deloitte, really about the different areas of how machine and the humans interact. And hopefully it will give us some fuel for our discussion as well. So let me share my screen in order to do that. And I'm going to go here. So I'm going to share this PowerPoint. Well, you've heard already that I'm a co-founder and CEO at Cammio Video Recruiting Expert. So actually what we do is we apply video in a talent acquisition process. So wherever currently there's text, we actually bring out video components in order for you to videofy recruitment. And why? Because actually we feel that's a great way to attract and engage candidates, but also to select candidates. And it delivers lots of data along the way. But that's enough said about video in recruiting. What I'd like to kind of talk about is what we really see is as a long-term trend. This is actually some research that came out a while back already. And it really talked about I think the choice we have ahead of us in recruiting when it comes to the type of work you'd like to do. So when you look at this overview, you can actually see jobs with the lowest likelihood of being automated, top of the list, and jobs with the highest risk of being automated, bottom of the list. And I think today, if you are a recruiter and you're doing lots of phone screens, you're doing lots of calling out to candidates, lots of manual tasks there. I think you probably are more in the category of a telemarketer. Whereas if you are a recruiter today that actually has applied much of automation already and technology to automate those repetitive tasks, you probably will spend more of your time as a counselor, as a therapist to your candidates, and really counseling them towards their right career opportunity. And I think today that contrast is very clear. You have a choice. You can either be the telemarketer, but your job will likely be automated, or you could be the coach, therapist for your candidates. And I think interesting report I can definitely recommend it to everyone to have a look is the Future of Jobs report by the World Economic Forum. They bring out this report every 1 or 2 years, and they really talk about the trends that are in HR, in the way we look at work, the types of jobs that will be in demand, the types of skills that will be in demand. And I'm not going to go into too much detail. I just want to kind of highlight a few things from that report. First and foremost, when you look at the tasks actually performed by humans versus machines, and you see actually that every type of task listed in this graph actually will be more automated towards 2025 versus 2020. Of course, the highest growth is expected to happen in looking for and receiving job-related information. You can actually automate this, but also when it comes to administration and when it comes to physical and manual work activities. So there's lots of but basically in any type of role that we do, we will have more and more machine-aided capacity to help us with those jobs. And when you then also look at the types of skills we look for when hiring new people into our teams, we actually will see that there's a number of skills actually that are in higher demand, and some skills actually that maybe are lower in demand or even decreasing. And that's, for example, the case when it comes to critical thinking analysis. That's where we need more and more people actually that are able to have a creative approach, are focused on problem solving, are really kind of human-centric, and are really adding that human component rather than doing the repetitive automated tasks. And of course, this is a very granular, very kind of overall view, but still, I think it holds some nice truths for us to really think about. Where do we see our own value versus where do we see the value of technology? And the top skills for 2025, again, from the World Economic Forum, will be analytical thinking, active learning, complex problem solving, critical thinking, and creativity. Right? So those are really type of things that where basically we say, well, it's really hard for a machine to do this, but actually it is something that's really where we need our human capacity, our human talent, our human intelligence to really add that with machine-aided technology. And when we look at kind of just a very factual, the human opinion or the human assessment versus the algorithm, we actually see already quite a lot of research coming out where we say, well, the machine actually does a better job at predicting supervisor ratings, number of promotions, ability to learn from training versus the human. So we really need to kind of figure out, are we kind of competing with the machine, or are we really kind of focusing on where we add value as humans? And as you already kind of mentioned, the super teams is a phrase that was coined by Deloitte, is really talking about not the conflict between the human and the machine, but really about the complementary nature of human and machine. So how can AI assist us rather than replace us? And how can and how can the organization actually benefit from AI when optimizing work? But it's really not about kind of replacing jobs, it's really about enhancing jobs. And I listened to a really interesting podcast last week from the Chief Design Officer.
Customer service consumer.
Oh.
Sorry, I think one of our panelists has their mute button still on. Can our panelists just turn off put on the mute, just to allow Walter to complete?
Thanks. I think what I also heard an interesting podcast last week of the Chief Design Officer of SAP, and he talked about the 3 areas where they are looking at kind of machine versus human interaction. They're talking about automation, doing things more efficiently, augmentation, enhancing human capacity, and autonomy, supporting decision-making by the individual with machine-based information. And those are the three areas where we really see there's not a conflict between the human and the machine, but there's an enhancement of the human. And I think, of course, we've all seen pictures and movies that are kind of quite futuristic somehow still, but like the exoskeleton, right? So kind of this is really an example about technology helping us as humans to do tougher work better, right? Heavy lifting. We can suddenly increase our strength tenfold or 100-fold actually with machine-aided capacity. So this is really about an example about not us being replaced by robots, but really about us being enhanced by technology. And the same actually goes for recruiting. When you look at recruitment, for example, one area of automation that we also kind of really like and that we really propagate when it comes to Cammio is automation of scheduling. So scheduling is really, an interview coordination is really kind of a hassle, right? You need to kind of reach out to people. Do we have time then? Coordinate with the hiring manager, find the relevant time slots. And it's really kind of it's a very highly time-intensive job. But what if you could automate this? What if you could just kind of basically allow the candidate to self-schedule the interview with you, or the computer to find the right spot in the calendar for everyone? This is already available today. So this is actually where you can save time, and that time you can spend on coaching candidates. Another area, of course, that we propagate on the Cammio side is really about automating the first selection. So we actually have a technology that's video-based, where you are able to create a question set, send out those questions to multiple candidates, and they can individually answer those questions. You have a structured interview. You can compare these candidates, but you don't need to be present for every single interview. It's automated, and it really allows more candidates to show more of themselves, and it allows you to collect data. And the data that you can collect, for example, from a video, is information on Big Five. So how extroverted is somebody, how conscientious is somebody, what's the learning capability of somebody. Or as you see on the left-hand side, what we can actually do is we can really create a skill-based profile from somebody. We can really, based on the interview that you've done and actually applying data science to that, enhance that interview and create a skill-based profile of that candidate. So you have an interview that, while you're doing it, enhanced by machine learning, is creating a Big Five profile and creating a skills passport for somebody. Awesome. More on that actually is available in what we have kind of described in the state of AI in recruitment in a white paper that we published. But I think just want to kind of set the scene a bit here on what's possible and where you can already apply automation today in your daily job when it comes to recruiting and HR. So hopefully that was a bit of an inspiration at the start of this panel.
Thank you very much, Walter, for that insightful presentation. I'd like to welcome our panelists back. And just before I ask the next question, we do have a poll for you to participate in. And this really has to do with what your primary decision method or way of screening applicants in 5 years' time is going to be. We've got a couple of options here: automated selection with AI only, manual selection supported by AI enriched information, or manual selection only. And yeah, I mean, the reason why this topic has been so important is because technology is ever evolving, and with everybody working from home, we've all been thrust to this world where the need to adopt technology is no longer an option that the organizations can ignore. So it'll be very interesting to hear what our attendees today are saying. And Walter, if you'll just comment on the results just before we move on to the next panelist. The results are as follows. It seems we have 23% of our attendees saying they're going to be moving with automated selection using AI only. The overwhelming majority is going to be using a combination of manual selection supported by AI enriched information. And worryingly so, there's still 6% who are going to be doing so manually only. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, to be honest, actually, I'm a technology enthusiast, right? So I love innovation, new technologies, so I really propagate that always. However, my choice would also be manual selection supported by AI. And why? I actually think that an AI always will have an error margin, right? Any technology that you use has an error margin. Any assessment that you today use has an error margin. However, with AI, that error margin is very consistent because it's a machine. So it will always make the same mistake. So if you're that individual that falls into that error margin, you will always get excluded and you will never get a chance to actually have a chance for that job. So technology actually is between you as an individual and your career, your future, and your career is a super important part of your life. And of course, the manual error margin may be bigger. However, the manual error margin is random. So with one recruiter, maybe I'll be the error margin, I will get excluded, but the next recruiter, maybe I'll get included. So I think it's although the error margin is bigger, I think it's also fair because I have a shot every time rather than get excluded always. So for me, being a technology enthusiast, I would think that we should always have a human involvement in a process because that's also respectful of candidates. They are spending time with us to kind of explain who they are, what they've done. So I think we should always have a human eye, but it will be enriched by and supported by information that may be generated by machines. And I think what we also see, fortunately, in, for example, the GDPR context, so the European data processing regulation, is that human involvement actually is mandatory. You are not allowed to have a machine decide who can enter a process or not. And I think it's good actually that there's a legal context here because I think it's dangerous to allow a machine with an error margin to have the consistent error margin always. That's my personal opinion.
All right. Thank you for that. Ndivhu, I'd like to come over to you next. And my question for you is, with this new world of sourcing, screening, and assessing individuals and candidates, how has talent acquisition evolved at TransUnion specifically?
Yeah, in TransUnion, I think the way that we have approached it, it has been really a journey of digital transformation in HR in general. And then what that has done from a talent acquisition perspective is that the digitization process has focused on enabling, a great candidate experience. Because if you talk to people who are looking for jobs, the experience that they have going through that process, it's usually a difficult process. People get nervous. So you want to make that experience as pleasant as possible without losing out on identifying great talent. And that's something that we've been doing. And in doing that, we have also been able to create platforms, in terms of our ERP and also the digital platforms that we use for recruitment, where our talent acquisition professionals are able to work seamlessly through the system while engaging with candidates as well, which has taken out some of the manual work, but it has not taken out all of it. And that is the reason why now we are in a process of moving into using artificial intelligence, where we are going to be going live in terms of really leveraging everything that is out there in terms of using artificial intelligence and chatbots around communication with candidates, and then also screening and scheduling of interviews and engagements. And what that is going to do is further enhance, the value that our talent acquisition professionals bring to the company, because it is true that you can't really rely on the machines only. What they can only do for you is to make the whole process more efficient, so that the humans in the team who are really, people that you want to keep engaged and you want to make sure that you leverage the skills that they have, are going to be able to do the most strategic aspects of hiring. So what this is really going to do, and I must say that my talent acquisition team is quite excited about the prospect of us going live on AI, because now they are going to be able to focus on what really makes them engaged around talent acquisition. And I think Walter did touch on it, because at the end of the day, the machines can do so much in terms of, screening and identifying talent, but your talent acquisition people are the ones who understand your culture. I saw a question in the chat around, someone posted saying that, algorithms depend on, the biases that come into the algorithms can also impact around the type of people that end up being shortlisted if you rely on a machine only. And that is where the value of the human beings within talent, the professionals in talent acquisition are going to really bring a lot of value, and we can be able to leverage them more, because they are not going to be encumbered with the things that they don't really need to do. They don't have to worry about scheduling, because our candidates are going to be able to self-schedule on our website. And the video interviewing as well, it's going to help them to be able to really go and screen people who have already been screened, for them to bring in that human touch of understanding the environment and understanding the type of people who are going to flourish within the organization. So for us, we strongly believe that this partnership is going to enable us to be able to identify the best talent, and within the shortest possible amount of time, and we are going to really make better decisions when it comes to hiring decisions in partnership with hiring managers. Sungula, you are on mute.
Another mute moment. Sorry for that. I was saying thank you very much, Ndivhu. The next question is going to be directed at Heidi, and that is about the fact that you are a big advocate of people development, and I'm sure that given that you agree that human skill will always be valued in every organization despite the introduction of new technologies, how are you aligning mindsets at Coronation to change the candidate experiences and approaches to sourcing talent by combining technology with the human skill?
Thanks, Sungula, and hello, everybody. I'm seeing some familiar names come up in the chat. So yes, I am very passionate about people development, but then, that does need to include technology. So in order to develop, you need to embrace new technologies. If I think about when I started recruiting, it was paper-based CVs, filing hard copies of those. It was very labor intensive. When I hear Walter talk about self-scheduling, I mean, immediately my ears pricked up, because I think, my team spent a lot of time in juggling calendars, so basically we've got team interviews. Sometimes our entire investment team need to interview one candidate, and to schedule that is really, really challenging. So I do think also COVID has taught us that there's a lot that we can be doing virtually. We were forced to embrace it, and we've actually done it successfully. I am still very nervous to make hiring decisions without meeting somebody in person. So I do think there's a place for both. I think that you can do a lot using AI. Things like automatic regrets would help us immensely. We often have a huge amount of volumes of applications. So, and there are some criteria that are non-negotiable. And I do think that in that, a system that could automatically filter and regret people would be amazing. The one concern there obviously is that humans lie, unfortunately. So we've started by setting quite strict screening questions on our system to try and aid us in our screening and filtering. And then we have people who just lie in the screening questions, and it still requires a human to then go onto the CV and see that, what they've said is actually true or not. So I think, like all systems, it's a matter of what's put in terms of what you can take out. I often give the example of, we use LinkedIn as the search function, and I was looking for a qualified chartered accountant for our finance team. So I did a search on chartered accountant, investment industry, certain degrees, and I thought it must be an easy search. And the person we landed up hiring was referred to me by one of my colleagues, And when I went onto LinkedIn, he hadn't put that he was a chartered accountant on his profile. So, you know, I think you have to always bear in mind that it's about what information is given to the system. So the system can do a great job as long as the information provided is accurate. Where I think the humans will still need to come in is to check that data and verify that data. And also, again, you know, my one concern is they say that 93% of communication is nonverbal. So, you know, you can screen, but I've learned from experience, we do a lot of video conferencing. So we'll interview somebody who's not based in Cape Town. And if we go through all our technical and competency questions, they look like they're the ideal candidate. We often will fly them down. I walk into the room and immediately I can tell that it's just not the right fit. And I don't even know what that is that I'm picking up. And I know my team get frustrated because they often use me as a second round check. And I'll interview someone and I'll just say, no, they're not right. And they'll go, but why? Why are they not right? And it's that intangible culture stuff that Ndivhu talked about, you know, that you have to be able to pick up on the sort of human skills that are going to work within your culture and your environment. But I do think there's a huge place for AI. If you can set up your systems correctly in terms of filtering and screening, you just have to also be very aware of not then landing up with clones, you know. So my concern with the AI is that you have to set the same criteria, you know, and I'm an employment equity manager, I'm passionate about transformation. I want to also be able to find potential in candidates. And I do worry a little bit with AI in South Africa. You'd need to also be able to make sure that you are getting potential candidates who might not have all the right experience, but have the base profile that actually would allow you to train and develop them into what you're looking for. So we need to check that AI, similar with LinkedIn, you know, South Africa is an anomaly. We are a very different environment. We are trying to transform. We are passionate about employment equity. So we need to just make sure that any AI that we introduce is able to pick up on those nuances as well. I like the idea of the skills passport. I think that sounds great. So basically somebody can, if they have the skills, they can put it onto a passport, you know, as long as it's verified. I think that's a great idea. And I'm trying to think I think that it should definitely be a case of working together. I think that I immediately was never fearful of AI. You know, I think there were so many people who are saying the robots are going to take our jobs. You know, that's never been my concern. I almost feel that it's a time now for the humans to shine. The people with the human skills are going to be the sought after, you know, candidates. So, you know, for my team and I think we want to use AI to make our roles easier and more efficient. But if you look on that list of the skills that Walter put up, it's emotional intelligence, it's resilience, it's self-awareness. These are all human skills. You know, so I know now that the personal development part is going to become more important in the world, you know, so something that I'm passionate about in terms of humans, their development, being more self-aware, reaching their full potential. I really do believe that the time is now. We need to know how to work with systems so that we can free ourselves up to focus on the skills that humans can only do. Which are those things like problem solving and, you know, kind of interacting with other humans. So, yeah, and the culture piece for me is very important. You know, it's very hard. And I think we try to set up questions. I often know that if I ask certain questions, a person's response is going to guide me as to whether they're a culture fit or not. It's quite difficult to set up machines to be able to screen for that. I'm not saying it's impossible, but I think that in our industry, culture is king. We don't make widgets. You know, our whole success is based on human potential and intellectual capacity. So that culture and making sure that people enjoy our environment is crucial. So, you know, I want to be sure that any AI systems that I'm using would be able to sift for that. You know, the system that we use, we have a flagging system, which saves us time so that if we have a candidate we've screened before and we can actually attach a flag to them, that helps me the next time that I'm screening. That is AI. Otherwise I'd have to go back in and look at that candidate again and have to screen it a second time. So these are the kinds of things where I think AI is amazing, in that you can save people into a database and actually attach certain icons or flags to those candidates that would help you in future. So I might interview a candidate today that's fantastic, but doesn't meet the requirements that I'm looking for. If I can flag that candidate and put it into my system, next time I'm looking, I can use a search functionality, and your system should be able to, pop out candidates that might be suitable. I think the searching and mining databases, for me, is a huge potential of AI. We have hundreds of people applying into our system and into our database. I still don't know that we're actually mining that talent effectively. So I think AI would be incredible for that, to be able to go into people who've already reached out to our brand and said, I want to work for you, but might not have been successful in getting a job so far. I think that that's where AI would be hugely helpful, because a human to go and wade through 100,000 applicants on a database, that would be impossible. But AI would really be great in terms of helping us narrow down and inviting those people perhaps to reapply for a new opportunity. So yeah, I think that any human who's not willing to embrace the fact that AI can make their lives easier and save them time is going to struggle. It's a matter of being able to work with the machines and making sure that you can use the machines to save you on time and do things that you could do but would be time intensive for you, so that you free yourself up to do the value add stuff.
Yeah, maybe if I can quickly add, Heidi, I think it's really also not necessarily that the machines are intelligent, but they just have so much more processing capacity, and we as humans remain the intelligence. That's my view on it. And I think also, maybe just briefly what you were talking about, I think it's going to be more and more important to look at potential of candidates rather than what we've done for years. Look at, has somebody done this role, this particular role for the last 5 years, last 10 years? Who cares sometimes, right? If it's 3, 5, or 10 years, we need to be more and more looking at the potential of somebody. Is somebody able to learn new skills? Because very likely that job that you're hiring for right now may not be the same job anymore in 3 or 5 years' time. So learning capability is way more important than number of years of experience. So looking to the past on the CV is getting less important versus looking towards the future. What is the potential of this person, and can they develop? Can they learn? Can they adopt new skills? What's their emotional intelligence? That's going to be super important.
And I just want to add one last thing. We were forced now with, as I say, COVID has forced us to look at all different ways of doing things. And we screen for bursary students every year from all over the country. And we normally actually fly them down and interview them and put them through various processes in Cape Town. And this year we were not able to do that because of COVID. So, and it's quite difficult to interview school leavers. They don't have work experience. So it's an unusual interview because you are once again looking at potential. So having to kind of gauge that. And this year, for the first time, we got them to actually prepare a video and send it to us so that we could get a sense of who they were as people, in order to try and select them as bursary students that we offer bursaries to. So, the idea of a video as an initial screening tool was something we just adopted because we had to, because we couldn't fly them here. And it worked really well because it's a first step. You would still want to then possibly have a follow-up interview, but in terms of bursary applications or any high volume jobs, so grad recruitment is another area where you're trying to differentiate between high volumes of candidates who don't have a lot of experience. So all of them have a degree, from very different universities. It's very difficult to differentiate between 200 amazing grads. One really good way would be that video, where you actually ask them to send a video, maybe ask them 4 key questions, and then you can use that video to compare and at least narrow it down to actually decide who you interview from there.
Yeah, and that's automation efficiency. That's it. Yeah, but the intelligence still remains with the humans. Yeah.
Yeah, before I come to you, Joe and Ndivhu, do you have anything to add to what the two have discussed?
Yes, and I like what Heidi has been saying, because it's exactly the same type of experience that we have, in that when you look at how you identify talent, sometimes even as a as a talent acquisition professional, trying to really understand what people have and whether what they have, the experiences that they've had in the past, build up into something that is going to be worthwhile and useful in your own organization. It's something that you can only do with a human touch. And for us in my company, a lot of the people who have come in and really thrived in some of the areas in our business were people who did not necessarily have the experience of the job that they are coming to do, but the combination of what they have done was able to show us that they have the potential, or they are able to think in a way that they are going to be able to thrive in a very, very unique and highly skilled environment. So that comes back to the issue of, it is so important to make sure that when we are using AI, we use it right, because if we don't use it right, we are going to lose opportunities of identifying talent that can be really great talent for your company, who may not have, you know, those characteristics or qualifications and experiences that you can just write down, but it's something that when you are a really highly skilled talent acquisition professional, you'll be able to see that this person can fit in this, and what they have done in the past, when you combine it, they will be able to do this difficult type of role or unusual role that you cannot find the exact skills in, you know, in a qualification or one job that they have done. So being able to be flexible and making sure that when we use the AI tools, we use them especially in terms of the initial screening, but without making it so stringent that it takes away the room for the human decision making around, you know, the type of people that you need for your organization.
Thank you, Ndivhu. And what I'm picking up is that there's a lot of intangibles that are involved with recruiting that an AI or a hiring robot won't be able to pick up on. Joe, I mean, you're a talent specialist, you're a seasoned headhunter and matchmaker when it comes to finding the right people for your organization. What kind of advice, or what are you doing within your organization to help the mindset change to one that's adapting to an environment of super teams, where there's an incorporation of both human talent, or eye for talent rather, as well as the efficiency that comes with having AI and hiring robots?
Thank you for that, Sangula. And I'm so excited about the conversation because I think all of us are obviously at a similar time in terms of our organizational journeys in trying to marry this world of AI and obviously, you know, the human element as well. For me, I certainly echo both Heidi and Ndivhu in that the best would be a marriage between those two. And if I think of talent acquisition and recruitment, and I'm so passionate about it, at the core of talent acquisition and recruitment, it's anchored around connection and relationship, right? Because that's how we've done it for years and years. A recruiter is as good as their network, and just knowing the right people and being able to match them. So absolutely support the notion around AI being able to create more efficiencies in terms of screening and getting the right candidates in front of us. To Heidi's points, I mean, Absa, we are a massive organization. We've also got quite a number of, whether it's in our young talent space or even in the professional hire space, we are inundated with candidates that are wanting to apply for jobs. And obviously, if you think of the macroeconomic issues that we are struggling with at the moment, unemployment is only on the rise. So, I mean, in my mind, when I look at talent acquisition at the moment, it's asking of us to think differently as organizations. And I certainly think as much as there may be even more candidates on the market at the moment, the fact that, you know, in terms of parameters and being able to access global talent, that's completely different. But having said that, I also think that the talented individuals that are sitting within SA are also now able to be kind of headhunted, and, you know, those global kind of regional geographical boundaries no longer exist. So people can access our talent, and we again as organizations have to differentiate ourselves. How do I allow and help Absa, you know, to stand out in the market against another competitive company? And what we've done differently is that we're wanting to almost talk to this essence of Africanity that Absa is and telling our story. Because yes, COVID's thrown us into this strange way of working where, well, it's not so strange anymore, I'm loving it, but we're working from home, right? We're working from home, we're schooling our kids from home, everything's happening virtually. How then does a candidate or talent in the market gain an understanding of what is Absa about? What is their culture philosophy, leadership philosophy, transformational journey? Where are they going to? What is an insight into Absa from the outside? Before, I mean, interviews would be held at these grand offices. You come there suited and booted, you're meeting the hiring managers in person. That's no longer happening. I'm recruiting, you know, senior members of our leadership teams over MS Teams conversations. I'm putting them in front of ExCo members over virtual meetings. And, you know, I've recently placed our group chief internal auditor, and she started and she had no human interaction with any one of the hiring managers until the day that she started. So that's our new reality. And so I want to celebrate it in that we are almost embracing it and we're not letting that become a hurdle, but I'm also not taking away from the fact that we're needing to give people an experience. So it's really about now tying that customer centricity, that candidate experience, and elevating that. And what we've done within the apps, or what we're currently doing rather, is that we're focusing on, okay, great. So whereabout can we make efficiencies, and how do we lean on AI, etc., to help us in terms of our pace of hires? Because yes, there's talent in the market, but they're getting snapped up even faster. So how then do we rest on that? Video interviewing tools, screening, you know, AI algorithms, etc., to help us and assist us in getting that hiring process more efficient and faster. At the same time, we're looking at diversifying our recruitment strategy. So where is the candidate that we're looking for ultimately sitting? If we look at data, historical data, to Walter's point, yes, of course, there were a set of skills that made Absa great at one point. Are those going to be the same set of skills that's going to make Absa great in the next 3 to 5 years? Possibly not. So are we sitting here and we're going, what skills are we hiring for in the future? How then and where are those skills sitting? What is the type of candidate profile that we're looking for? And how are we speaking to those individuals where they are living and working and currently sitting? The other thing that we've done that I'm really excited about is, again, back to that candidate, almost customer experience, in tying and creating a story and a narrative around who Absa is. So recently we've used LinkedIn as a platform where we are sharing stories from both from colleagues as well as our ExCo leadership teams, in creating a sense of engagement and connectivity and understanding, well, from the outside, this is what we see Absa as, but, you know, should I apply? What would my experience be? You know, who's working there? What do they sound like? What are they passionate about? What is the organization doing differently? And so we've started sharing stories, because as Africans, we've grown up like that, right? Storytelling is just a part of who we are, just naturally. And so we're wanting to go out and we're wanting to share the Absa story. And I think it's a necessary thing, especially in light of that miss in terms of, you know, connecting with you face to face or human to human. You're able to get a sense of who we are and what we stand for and what our narrative is and where our aspirations are, and how we as an organization want to positively shape society beyond just the walls of what we stand for as Absa Bank. So that's kind of where we are at the moment, Sangula. And I think that one of the biggest things that we're also focusing on is creating feedback loops and feedback mechanisms, whether it is from internal colleagues or our hiring managers or even the talent market. In order to refine and get better, you're constantly needing to cast your eye on, well, what is the data telling me right now or historically, but also then creating a feedback mechanism to go, well, what about this? Have you thought of this? And this is what my hiring experience has been like so far, or my candidate experience, and incorporating that to only then make yourself even better during that process. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joe. And yeah, I think we're getting a very riveting discussion going here with regards to, you know, the combination of tech and humans when it comes to finding the right talent for your organization. I've just launched another poll here, which is basically about where are you going to focus on when it comes to introducing AI into your super team. And it's very interesting to see that the scores are very balanced. The options are video recruitment, technology, tracking candidate experience and behaviors, digital onboarding versus talent sourcing systems. And it's a very close race at the moment. Walter, we're now entering the Q&A portion of our discussion. So as I sort through the questions, I'm going to ask you quickly to just comment on the findings of these results, which I am going to close the poll. See, the thing is, the numbers are still coming in. But, I want to get your thoughts. One of the things that's coming from the audience today is, the whole issue of bias and the fact that, technology itself can be biased depending on how the algorithm is written, or maybe how the requirements that recruiters set out there, they could exclude certain candidates based on how they are asking the technology to source its candidates. What is the solution for, first of all, having software that is not correctly put together, and also setting the right requirements?
Yeah, I think actually it may not even be about software not being correctly put together. I think actually it's maybe about software being perfectly put together, but it can never be 100% accurate. And the error margin will be extremely consistent because the software is actually so well put together. I think that's where I think we just need to be careful with just kind of looking at AI, embracing it. I think for example, I've seen quite a bit of, and we were focusing on video recruiting. So, and of course, it's been awesome last year in terms of the technology adaptation that overnight video has become mature. So we don't need to talk to anybody anymore to say, well, video could be a good idea for remote hiring. Have you ever thought about remote hiring? No, that's not a topic anymore. That's just, that just happened overnight, basically, and it's logical now. But now it's really about how can we innovate. And over the last few years, we kind of saw, for example, some technologies coming up that were looking at facial expressions, kind of looking at the mimics of the face to read an AI being adopted there to create a profile of candidates based on what you can see in terms of movement in the face. So when somebody's responding to a question, when they listen to the question and when they respond to the question, basically you can actually read the face. There's like 200 markers in the face. You can actually see the movement. And you can create an emotional profile from a video interview, basically. And we kind of really, it was really kind of a discussion also that we had in our team. Should we be doing this? Shouldn't we be doing this? And actually, in the end, we basically said it's possible. Actually, that technology has been around for a while, but we're not going to do it because we think an emotional profile of a candidate, it just doesn't make sense. Because without measuring context, and context, I think also to the point earlier about culture, culture is also context, right? Somebody could be super colleague in one context, culture, and in the next context with the same experience, the same person could be maybe just not the high performer that you expect that person to be. And I think emotion also, when you're showing emotion of a candidate without showing context, it just kind of could even be something that creates like the wrong decisions. For example, I could be in a traffic jam, right? I'm a bit frustrated. I need to hurry because actually my meeting starts in 5 minutes, right? So, and just in time I enter, I was really angry with the person, whatever, in front of me, and that maybe still resonates. But in that interview, actually, I don't show that context. I just kind of maybe show a Walter that maybe is still a bit frustrated from the traffic jam that he was in before. I think that's the risk of AI and the risk of technology without the human factor involved, that actually you just kind of need to make sure, just keep thinking intelligently, and that's why we are humans. Where does it make sense? Where there's a risk? How should we involve the human? But I think there's lots of areas where we shouldn't kind of just say, well, let's just go for AI because it's possible. And we kind of, for example, on our side said, well, the facial expression for an emotion doesn't make sense. However, using, for example, the verbal expression, so how somebody talks, actually, what we do, for example, the Cammio platform, we transcribe the audio into text. Ironically, because our whole mission is, of course, to put text in a recruitment process into video. But actually, in the interview side, we actually then transfer the audio into text, and we can analyze that using natural language processing, which actually has a very high scientific validity, and actually does allow you to create all kinds of profiles of candidates that actually have a really scientific basis. But again, just kind of don't jump on any technology because it's there. Really kind of look at where does it make sense, where does it add value. I think that's also to the poll here. I think it's quite good actually. There's quite a good spread of people kind of having different priorities, because for one organization it may make sense to just start with video. For the other, it makes sense to start with digital onboarding. You will have different priorities, and I think it's not about creating a Christmas tree, right, with all kinds of decorations and oh, there's a new technology here, let's hang it on the Christmas tree, and you forget about the tree itself. What's my core mission? What do I need to achieve? Or you're just collecting technologies. I think we always need to be very mindful about what's the purpose, what does it bring to us, how does it benefit the candidate, and does it really create a fair process that's engaging and actually allows us to really get to know the candidate better.
Thank you very much. We have a lot of questions here, and I'm not sure we'll be able to get through to all of them. What I can assure you is that those that we don't answer, we'll send through to our panelists and then ask them to answer you directly when they have a moment. I next have a question for you, Heidi. It's from Kathy, and she's referring to what you spoke about, where culture fit was a concern, where I think you made an example of sometimes your team will come to you with a candidate and you will not agree that they're a good one, and it'll be because you don't think they were a good fit for the organization. The question that Kathy has is that this whole word fit could be a problem. She says, particularly in the US, and now she's starting to see it's a problem in SA, that a lot of employers are hiding behind this word to kind of not be clear about what the fit exactly is, and maybe to hide behind their own organizational bias when it comes to lack of transforming and things like that. So do you have, the question is, perhaps we should be talking about the gut feeling or experience that one has around a person, and how to make sure people can more easily understand what the fit is without saying that, an individual is not a culture fit. If the organization is not transformed and somebody who's a transformation candidate does not get the role, for example, because they're not a culture fit. Do you have a comment on this?
Yeah, and I think that's a very valid concern. I think that we all need to be aware of the fact that our culture needs to be one that is open to all. I think if you have a culture that is indirectly discriminating, you have to have a look at that. The things that I think about in our environment is that we're a very flat structure. We don't have grades or ladders. So, somebody who is looking for that is going to struggle in our environment, And then, we had to stop and think about it. There's a lot of young Black talent in South Africa who are very ambitious and they want to see progression. And so we had to make sure that we were highlighting career success stories to show that even though we don't have ladders and grades, we have a number of people who've come in as grads and who have moved into other roles in our organization. So, when I say about fits, I think that I'm very aware of the fact that it can be a discriminator. And that's why, I mentioned earlier that my concern about AI is that you don't want to be hiring clones. You need to make sure, and I've seen that in my long history of recruiting, is hiring managers always want to hire themselves. They don't know that they're doing that, but they really want to hire themselves. So they will often be looking for the profile that is familiar to them. And we have to often raise awareness around that to make sure that, if you continue to hire yourself, you're never going to transform if all your leadership are white, for example. So, I am very aware of that when I say fit, but I also think I've seen how people where we've made mistake on fit, within the first 3 months, you can tell that they're not enjoying the environment. So I think it's two pieces here. You have to make sure your environment and culture is more open and embracing of difference. And then I think you are very justified in making sure that you hire people that are going to enjoy and thrive in that culture. So we do stay interviews, and one of the key things that came up is that our employees stay with our organization because they enjoy the people that they work with. So that is when our roles as talent acquisition become crucial, because people like to work for our company because they like the people that they work with. So you have to make sure that you perpetuate that. And I'd like to think that that it is an environment that is open to all, but it's something that I have to be constantly aware of, so that, and I say that because I think we have hired amazing candidates who have potential without the experience, and they're proven to be amazingly successful. So, you know, I think it's more about an intangible mindset, people who are not title driven, you know, or people who like the freedom to be able to manage their role without hierarchy. You know, those are the kind of things, and you get people who thrive in those environments, and you get people that don't. And it's not necessarily along race or gender, it's a personality type. But we have to make sure all the time that those qualities that have made us successful are not becoming barriers to transformation. And that's why we constantly are checking that. We do the stay interviews, do the exit interviews. So I take Kathy's point. I think we have to be very careful on what we call fit, but also bearing in mind that, you know, I think that we need to make sure we're hiring people who are going to thrive in our environment. There are a number of environments out there, and sometimes a fit is not that they're not a good candidate, they're just not the right candidate for us, and they will not be happy in our environment for whatever reason. So, you know, I think it is something that I'm not going to let go of and say we're not going to use, you know, cultural screening questions, because I do believe that, and I know, I mean, I have members of my team, you know, one I tease her a lot because she, you know, she always wants to help people and always wants to fight for the underdog, you know, and I've had to say to a number of times is that if you hire this person and you put them into a team and they're not the right fit, you actually are ruining their career as well. So you need to think about it from the candidate perspective. Similarly, I bumped my head when I found what I feel is an amazing candidate, you know, an awesome Black candidate that I think would be a perfect person for the role that I'm trying to fill. Without full buy-in from the team, whether it's bias or not bias, you are actually setting that person up to fail. So I do think you have to consider team fit as well as cultural fit, and that is different across our company. So, you know, certain personalities will not fit in certain teams, and you've got to make sure that the teams are not being discriminatory or inflexible. But I do think putting the wrong person in the wrong job is doing them a disservice as well as us. So it's a fine balance would be my answer.
Yeah, I think what that illuminates is that it's finding a candidate to join your team is a complex endeavor, right? And we're discussing how technology can help you achieve it better, but ultimately there's too many intangibles to get it right 100% of the time. We're running out of time now, but I do have one more question, which I think touches on an issue we haven't spoken about. Ndivhu, in the chat, you referred to something Joe said about, you know, appealing to the candidates to ensure that they feel that they want to work for your organization and that it speaks to the work that needs to be done towards one's employer brand, so that you attract a very specific kind of person who is attracted by your employer brand specifically. And can you just tell us a little bit, you know, we're down to 2 minutes left, but just tell us how you focus more on the employer brand as an avenue for improving the quality of candidates.
Yeah, what we have done at TransUnion, we work very hard in terms of identifying, you know, employees within the organization who are thriving, who we believe really understand who we are and what we do. And we put them out there for them to talk about their experiences, to talk about their jobs, not necessarily just to say that TransUnion is great, but to talk about real experiences. And we feature them on our websites. And, you know, when we do campaigns, those are the people that you will be reading about. And that gives a bit of a glimpse of, you know, someone who might be like me. This is how they feel working in this organization. And that may trigger an interest if I think that is what I'm looking for, because they're talking about real experiences in working in this organization and how they have grown, if they've grown at all, and what has made them stay. So that's what we do.
All right, thank you very much. That brings us now to 1 minute to 12. So we are almost at the end of these very exciting webinar. I feel like we could still talk for another hour, given the amount of questions that we have and really the topic we have at hand. But before I close off, I'd like to tell you all about the the upcoming webinars that we have. On the 5th of May, we have a discussion with Francois Devet from Wamley, where we're going to talk about a very similar topic, which is about finding people without losing your mind. And I think that is a very apt title, because from all the various factors that go into finding the right person, I think if I had hair, I would be pulling my hair as a talent acquisition specialist. So on the 5th of May, we're going to be delving into the similar topic with Francois Devet from Wembley. We also have another one happening tomorrow, but I seem to have lost how to access that slide. There we go. That's tomorrow at 2 o'clock. We are going to be discussing how to re-energize your workforce. And that is with Kelecho Chilwane, Stephen Teasdale, and Yami Fasuan, where we're going to be discussing, employee experience and how to re-energize your workforce. A lot of people are feeling burnt out at the moment. Burnout is a very real topic, given how 2020 went and how 2021 started. A lot of us are really feeling like, the year's already very too long. So we're going to be discussing how to get your employees more motivated again, given the environment that we're all living in. So please tune in for that. Otherwise, I'd like to thank you all of my panelists for making the time and effort to share your time with us today. Your insights have been so valuable. I'd like to thank the attendees for really being engaged. I think engagement-wise, this has been one of our better performing webinars. The questions, if you could see the questions, there are so many that have gone unanswered. But I will ensure that our panelists get the questions that you've addressed to them, and they will get back to you as soon as they have a moment. But thank you all, and have a fantastic day and week further.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it. Okay.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.